Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome to another episode of the KDigitals podcast, where we dive into artists, their origin, their style, and their process. Joining me today is Bailey Marasch. How you doing today, Bailey?
I'm doing good. Chris, how are you?
Doing good, man. Doing good. It's January, but it's starting to feel like summer already in San Diego, so I'm up for it.
You're telling me we're getting a little bit of extra winter here in Vegas, which means 45, 50 degrees and sunny, but I'll take it. Coming from Wisconsin in the real cold, the cold. It's not too bad, but it's a nice little spring temp for me, so I'll take it in stride.
So in Vegas, is too hot for you? Do you think it's extra hot because you're from Wisconsin, or you think you're like adjusted to it now?
Oh, 100%. I think I'm definitely starting to adjust to it because I'm getting weird where the 115 days don't really bother me as much as they used to. They still bother me, but my first summer here, I was after about a week like, no, I can't do this. This is 110, 115 every day. No. Call me weird. I actually miss the snow and the knocking the sludge off the tires every now and then ain't too bad to me. But
It's like nostalgic.
It's become an adjustment for me. I'm starting to acclimate to it, which is weird when I go home now in the winter because it's freezing. So
Yeah. So before we get really into the interview, Bailey, I always like to have the guests define who they are as an artist, right? What do you do? How do you see yourself?
I would say the way I see myself, I would call myself a storyteller. To me, all of art, really is a means to tell a story. It's a means to, communicate something to the viewer, to the audience, whatever platform you're using. For me, I just happen to be a graphic designer. And for me, I'm trying to communicate things through the intent I put into my pieces, through typography, through image use and things like that. And being a graphic designer for the UFC specifically, narrative is a big part of the fight game. Narrative is a big part of, selling any bout that we have. And so the challenge event to event is what narrative, exists already, what narrative is there to play on in the artwork and in the marketing promotion of the event. And it's nice to be able to play a role in that storytelling and kind of be at the forefront of it because the art is one of the first things people see. And so getting to be a storyteller in a way that gets seen by so many people, I think is a really exciting thing for me. And I would say storyteller if I were to define it in one word.
Yeah, there's a question I really want to ask you because you're a graphic designer. So I'm not. I can do graphic design, but I don't think I would say I'm a graphic designer. I don't think I have the skills behind that. But whenever I look up jobs, right. Whenever I look up jobs, they always ask for InDesign experience. Does that really matter when in the professional world?
Big time. And this is one of the things that I say to the young professionals, coming out of college and things like that when they'll ask about experience and things like that. I say, don't be afraid of InDesign. Do not. A lot of people look at InDesign as a boogeyman. They look at it as something to run from. I did too in college. When I first started learning it, I said, what is this? No, I want to make like sports graphics. I don't need to lay out brochures and no, this is boring. This is weird. Give me Photoshop. And no, you realize on day one, I started with the UFC as an intern, and I came in on day one, and the first job I did was for like some directionals or something for backstage at the events using InDesign files. And from then on, the amount I use it every day is just about on par, a little bit less than Illustrator or Photoshop. To know how to format type and know how to format print projects, multiple page print projects, things like that is huge. And it's a tool that if you have in your tool belt, you're just that much more, it looks that much better, and it's something that you can use on basically anything going forward. So I would say learn it, love it, have it in the utility belt because it's only going to help you.
Yeah. How'd you get started with graphic design? Was it something you did before, like went to school for it, or did you discover it in school?
I always played sports. I was a football and baseball player my whole life, and I was always kind of obsessed with what I would say the aesthetic of sport. And I remember there was one day when I was a 10-year-old, I saw on the cover of Sports Illustrated the Oregon Ducks uniforms,
Mhm.
and something just clicked, and I said, "Oh wow, that's awesome! Like, I wonder if you can like make those." And so I started kind of just drawing things out and sketching things out, and coming into high school at this point, I was going on to footballuniformgenerators.com and stuff like that, and making things. And,
Yeah.
being headstrong going into college, thinking, well, no, I'm gonna play Major League Baseball, so I don't need to have a backup. Found out real quick that's not the case. And what came naturally to me was, hey, I've been dabbling in kind of, I've loved the uniforms, the logos, the aesthetics of sport, everything from day one. And there's a career path for me in that. And literally
Mhm.
just took that. And while I was attending University of Wisconsin Stevens Point for graphic design, I was just on the side. Like I said, my mentality at the time was very, no, I'm sports graphics, like the cool stuff.
Mm. Yeah.
And so in class, while we're learning InDesign and all these things, building the fundamentals, I'm outside of class, making just fan art for the Eagles and the Phillies, and
Oh.
just doing little things that I thought were cool and posting them on Instagram, getting maybe 7 likes. Um, and that ended up kind of, spiraling into uh, making some larger scale things, and eventually swinging a gig with the football team at Wisconsin Stevens Point, the Pointers team. Um, in which I was able to kind of come on and be really the head of their design and any marketing they were doing in the community and things like that. And from that, I was able to swing that into the UFC internship, and before long, that turned into the full-time gig. So it's kind of crazy to say, because now it's been over 4 years with UFC, but it still feels like that same sort of energy from day one. It's just like, have fun with it, make stuff I love, and make stuff that other people hopefully love too.
How 'cause the one thing that trips me about graphic designers is like little details. So like, especially like the UFC stuff, like you'll have, okay, here's the fighters, here's like the date, here's the fight, and then like the background will just have like a random gradient bar or like crisscross lines that are really faded, but you can see
Yep.
it. But it's like, how do you know? Let me just throw some spice in here. Like, how do you come up with those ideas? 'Cause that's like you said, sports graphics always have these details in it. That I'm like, I wouldn't have thought
Yep.
about that.
Oh yeah. No, it's a gift and a curse to be, to be a graphic designer. You really have to be addicted to the little details, and you have to be annoyed by the little details, and find, if something's a pixel off, you're going to identify it in a second. It's going to bother you.
Yeah.
But it comes down to me. There are happy accidents. There are a lot of happy accidents, but I think the most influential and the most successful design is born from intention. Um,
Mm.
and you're putting stuff together. You have, like you said, your building blocks of any, let's say, UFC poster, where you're gonna have to have your date, you're gonna have to have your event tab, you're gonna have to have the bout information with the names and the weight class and things like that. But when it comes down to like the background and stuff like you're talking about right now, it's all about keeping things cohesive and keeping things um, giving them that flair, that I hate the word pop, but I'm gonna say it, giving it
Okay.
that pop. But
Yeah.
it's all about doing that, but keeping it intentional and keeping it, communicating what you want to communicate. The 272 key art I was lucky enough to put together, which was Covington Masvidal. One of the nastiest rivalries we've seen, and we've now seen carry outside of the octagon, unfortunately. The narrative there was completely born of itself. That was not one you had to search for, you had to fight for. That was, okay, these two guys are sweet best friends. They hate each other.
Mhm.
Best friends turn bitter rivals. And like the background on something like that, it's my intent there was to keep it sort of clean, sort of, have the emotion convey itself, and the poses they have, the way they're looking at each other. And then in the background for that specific example, this was the battle for the King of Miami. They were saying, just popping things in, like a couple of those Miami nights, Miami vibes, colors, and things like that.
Mm.
Little tiny textures that might sell that, even subliminally sell that feeling, that vibe that captures sort of. And this is an event that took place in Vegas, so we don't want to go all out Florida with it per se, but little things that
Oh,
capture the attitude of the fight and the fighters.
what because like, yeah, you're in the UFC, it's an organization. So like how much of that freedom do you have to come up with stuff like that versus like, no, this is what you do it.
Mm,
Like we have a template we need to focus on.
yep, it's definitely you're dancing a fine line, because when it comes to, and in my specific case, I'm on the creative team, which falls under the brand marketing global creative team.
Mhm.
So our emphasis first and foremost is, okay, we're promoting the event, and this is going to go towards marketing collateral. This is going to go towards venue signage. This is going to go towards everything you see promoting this event. So that's something you have to keep in the front of your mind right off the bat. Is this something that can be used across the board? Is this something that can live for multiple platforms, multiple functionalities?
Mhm.
Um, but you do want to. The way I look at it is, I don't want to ever put myself in a box. I don't want to limit myself right off the bat, by any means. So frankly, the way I'll do it is I'll get as crazy as I can. I'll come up with the craziest idea. I'll get something on the canvas that's as out there as I can possibly do. And the way I look at it, we can walk things back from there. And there are, like I said, there are your elements to every poster that need to remain the same. We have a tab system for the event date and the event logo and stuff like that. But when it comes to typography and image treatment and stuff like that, I like to think I push the envelope as much as
Mhm.
I can. But you do want to consider the purpose of it moving forward. Because there's definitely a difference between, say, an artist series piece that's a one-off, or something that is going to be used for event marketing across the board. So it's
Mhm.
kind of a fine line, like I said, to keep that in the back of your mind, but not fight yourself to the point where you're keeping yourself to a template per se that is just rinse and repeat.
Yeah. What so is that something you had to like develop and learn? 'Cause you said it's been 4 years. Where like how have you changed as a designer from the point you started interning to like now being, 4 years strong?
Oh yeah, big time. I had to learn a lot in the 4 years, and shout out to my incredible team. The best to do it as far as I'm concerned. I came in as, like I said, as an intern with little to no experience, and I didn't know really a thing about how a full-fledged brand, a brand as large as the UFC, operated and stuff like that. And so I came in and was doing just the craziest posters without any consideration of
Yeah.
usage. And the way I built things was a nightmare for other designers to work on. And that's a big thing with the way our workflow goes is when you're designing things, you do have to keep in mind also that this is going to be a file that's shared with other designers, other partners, even sometimes, that things need to be able to be worked on, and can't just be a mess of a file and things like that. So I came in and my files were a mess, and I was doing things I didn't even, right off the bat, wasn't using our brand fonts and doing things that just
Mm,
intern level thinking on my part.
yeah.
And real quickly it became, like I said, my mentors around me, the team around me is just amazing. They're the best, and it was such a sort of quick learning curve that you start to realize, hey, there's a reason things work so cohesively around here. There's a reason this is such a well-oiled machine. And a lot
Mhm.
of it comes down to the fact that you learn quickly the way things are done, and the way they're successful around there. And so I learned real quick, like, hey,
Mm,
there's a system that works, and there's a system that is successful as far as um, our templates and things like that. But you're not a true designer if you're not pushing the envelope here and there. So learning
yeah.
learning which rules exist to be broken, and which places there are wiggle rooms, from my mentors, is probably the biggest thing I think that's gotten me to sort of free the mind, but also understand the way that things are done is for a reason.
Yeah. And so you appreciate that. Like you appreciate the structure that comes with the art too
Absolutely. I
sometimes.
appreciate the
Yeah.
structure. I appreciate the struggle. I appreciate the fact that off the bat I was frustrated. I'm like, oh, this is tough. I'm in an office environment now, and right off the bat, you do feel boxed in, because when you're a one-man band, as I was doing just random stuff for Instagram before that, you're doing whatever, and there are no sort of boundaries, and when you learn to deal with the boundaries and work around boundaries, it adds another dimension to you, because that's something you're always going to have to do as a designer. You're going to work with a client, or you're going to work with bosses and engineers and things like that, and you're going to have to know how to deal with feedback. And I think tough love is the nature of the beast in design, and I'm very grateful to have been given some of that right off the bat, and said like, hey, this is the way things are done, and this is where we feel you could be better. And I think that's the reason I've been able to grow as much as I have, honestly.
Yeah, I like that you said that, because I was saying, like, my background, I was telling you, like, I did photography, and then I was kind of bouncing between, like, going back to my corporate jobs, going back, and like the biggest thing I learned is, like, no matter what size or project, a client's always gonna be a client, and they're always gonna have feedback, and it's just like, and sometimes it's just dumb feedback, but it's the feedback, and you say, okay, well, that's what you want. And I think a lot of people have a hard time accepting, like, well, I'm the professional. I don't, like, but they're the client. You have to the different dance. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's learning communication too in those instances, and you got to learn how to fight that fight, so to speak, and how to do that in a respectful way, in a respectful manner, and how to communicate. Sometimes, hey, this change that we're looking at here might not be as successful in the art, and as it sounds on paper and things like that. You just got to know how to communicate, and you have to know how to go back and forth with people on creative issues and people on non-creative issues at the same time. I think that's a big part of working in the corporate realm, especially, that I've learned. I think is a huge tool in any designer's toolkit.
What so obviously, like, sports is like just like sports art is like what you pull from. Are there any other, like, um whether it's other designers, or other artists, or other mediums, or other types of art that's not sports, that, like, you like to pull from for inspiration, where they like, oh, I really like feel over here how they do their work?
Absolutely. I am definitely very meticulous, very meticulous about the way I find my inspiration, the way I look for it. I guess I'm meticulous, but at the same time, I'm not. I'm really, because for me, the biggest thing I had to learn too was to trust the process, and to understand that I can't really. Sometimes you're going to have to for the sake of time, but it's hard to force ideas out of the mind successfully. So I'll look at anything. I'll look at the paint on the wall, the cracks in the sidewalk. To listening to music, and even just the feeling that certain songs will give me, smells certain foods. It sounds very, very, very strange,
I get it
artisty,
though. Yeah.
anything. And obviously I look at a lot of sports art and things like that. The colors on different teams' uniforms and things like that, they'll a lot of times inform the way my mood board looks, the way I'm feeling on a certain project. Just album cover, a little bit of everything, honestly. I think I gather from basically everything I touch in my daily life. I've learned to kind of identify and pull things from that I can use as a mood or an intention for a certain piece, without taking things verbatim and looking at say an illustrated alternative movie poster or something like that, where the colors and the composition are fantastic, the typography is great, but I'm not going to use that sort of style, that sort of illustration style per se on this one poster. I can pull these different pieces from it that I do like, and I can pull pieces from the incredible depth of talent in the sports design field. I can hop on Twitter anytime, any day, and just see all the incredible things people are doing, not even just sports design, all the designers out there, and pulling, inspiration from them, and just kind of fueling that fire in the way that they were able to solve their creative problems, in a successful way, and see which ways I can kind of piecemeal from that, and what I can take from that,
What like you said, like, you could just go on Twitter and there's just a sea of endless designers out there and everything. What but that said, what makes someone a good designer, a graphic designer, right? Because you're gonna know Photoshop, but like
Yeah.
what pushes them to that next level, that's like, okay, you moved into this tier now.
That next level, that's a good one. Okay. I think for me, again, it comes back to the intention. It comes back to the intention and the tone that you're able to carry, because happy accidents happen all the time in all art, and happy accidents are sometimes the best. That's where we get a lot of our best things from. But I think what really sets you apart, what takes you to the next level, is you're able to definitively go into something with an intention. You're able to communicate, like I said, tell a story. You can tell the story that you want to tell in the way you want to tell it. And if you can do that in a clever manner, I think that separates you from, just sort of throwing things willy-nilly at the canvas, which there's a time and a place for sure. But I think being a designer, what takes you to that next level is, are you able to talk to your design, are you able to speak through the little pieces that, the background elements, like we were just talking about, to the typography, to the image choice, the little things in your piece. Can you walk through and break it down and say, this is why this is here, this is why I think this is successful, this is why I think this makes it an effective piece. I would say it comes down to intent and ability to deliver upon it in a unique way.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, I'm gonna totally go backtrack, because you know all this stuff now. How did you? Because you're in Wisconsin, you just out of school. How did you end up with UFC in Vegas? I feel like I skipped all that, but like the more you talk, the more I'm like, oh, there's a big part to the story that I should be asking.
100%. Yeah, no, I was going to University of Wisconsin, Stevens Point. Shout out Pointers. For graphic design, and just on the side was making stuff for fun. And like I said, that was able to turn into a role with the football team there as the graphic designer, sort of had the marketing for the team. And as I got some more experience with that, and as I went through, I think the 2018 season, I believe it was, working with the coaches, working with the players, and getting the experience of what it takes to sort of define a brand, even a brand as small as a D3 football team. What it takes to define that, what it takes to maintain that in a cohesive manner. And while I was doing that, I was keeping an eye out for opportunities, internship opportunities at that point, to go, gather experience and just see what it's like to be in the actual field out there, on the front lines, so to speak. And so, I was applying for everything. And funny enough, one of the first ones I applied for was UFC. And I had thought to myself when I did it, no, there's no shot. I've only done football stuff. I've only done baseball stuff. I've never done any MMA design. They're not gonna look at me for a second. And luckily that's not the way it ended up going. I got the call from a Vegas number that I ignored, because I said, why is Vegas number spam call? Spam call. And I hop on the voicemail, and it was invitation to interview for the internship, and one thing led to another, and we ended up coming out here, to my mom's chagrin, a 21-year-old moving to Vegas. And things went well there, and I came in honestly with the mindset of, hey, this is more than an internship for me, and this was at this point I was a semester into my junior year, and I had said to myself, I had said to myself, well, my mission here is to make things go well enough that I can swing this into a full-time gig. In school, I can figure out. I can figure that out down the line when I need to. I want to be here, and I want to make a difference here, in a full-time capacity. And lucky enough, by within the first few months, we were in discussions about bringing me on full-time, and that ended up happening. And I'm so grateful it did, because here we are, over 4 years later now, and what I have under my belt and what I've experienced and learned, and the amount I've learned just with my team and with these extremely high level creatives is, to me, is so much more than I would have learned in a classroom setting. And it was sort of a risky decision, I think, to take a leap there and say, hey, well, we'll figure out school at some point, but let's get a little bit of this job experience here. And I don't regret it for a second. Honestly, I think the things I've learned and the distance I've come since then has just been one hell of a journey, something I'm extremely grateful for. And that's where we're at today, I guess. There's the long and short of it. But
Wait, so did you finish your degree or no? That's still
I have not yet. No. I have
What? Nice.
none.
Yeah. So that's cool, man. So I'm gonna I'm gonna ask a long question, but it's more giving me the context. Like you were saying, like what makes a good designer is like be more intentional, be able to explain why I put this little piece of dust speck over here, why the color over here is a little bit of a certain gradient, etc. But you learned all that from experience. So like what was it junior level you that got their attention if you didn't have that mindset yet?
I think the biggest thing to me, I think, was that I showed right off the bat my ability to learn, my ability to adapt, and my ability to know that I wasn't Jack back then. You know, I wasn't anything. You know, I knew I came in with the mindset of like, hey, I don't know what I don't know. I'm gonna be a sponge, and I'm gonna soak up everything you guys have to say to me. And you know, if I'm lucky enough to have you, you know, even take me on, mentor me at all, I'm gonna eat that up every second. But you know, as long as I'm in this office, I'm gonna learn something every day. I'm gonna try something new every day, and I'm gonna go out of my way to make sure that I'm pushing myself every day to prove that, hey, you know. And that was the way I had thought about it at the time too, was if I can show them the tangible things every day that, or the intangible things every day that are going to hopefully sort of project in their minds that, hey, down the road, this guy could be an asset to this team. You know, I have a better shot of sticking around here. So that was my biggest thing, I think, was coming in, being a sponge, keep my mouth shut and listening, keeping ears open, mouth closed, and just, you know, grinding.
Yeah.
And I know I spoke, I know I said what I've learned here was much more than I would have learned in the classroom setting, things like that. But this is also something I've come to learn, and something I think out of maturity I've grown to understand more, is that the things I was learning in those classes, in those fundamentals classes, up until my junior year of school, which at the time I was like, no, this is, like I said, sports design. No, I'm not the brochure guy. I'm not going to make like packaging for you know, beer company. No.
Yeah.
I look back, and everything I learned there, I use every day. Those fundamentals, those things I learned in those classes that I frankly didn't know I was learning, because I sat in there with not the best attitude and thought, hey, no, I'm this isn't what I'm going to do. All those things stick with me. You know, the basics of typography, composition, color theory, all these types of things, even down to the one-off woodblock letterpress printing class that we had, that I thought was just, at the time, oh, this is lame. Now I look back, and all these things I'm extremely grateful for, because they informed all the decisions I make as a designer now. They stick around, and they subliminally will come up in my mind in every piece I make, every poster I'm working on. I'm thinking of color theory, I'm thinking of typography, I'm thinking of composition first and foremost. And you know, so I'm extremely grateful for the time that I spent at University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point. And UWSP taught me more than I know, and more than I knew even, you know, while I was there. So I think that's a huge reason that I was able to prove to them that I could learn, because, you know, I spent that 3.5 years at UWSP learning, even though I didn't know it, you know. So I think carrying that over to UFC, or anybody carrying over just that sort of mentality into a professional setting, is going to be what gets you where you want to go. You know, come in with humility and just work hard and be a sponge, you know.
That's cool, man. That's a bunch of sound bites in that, like in a good way, you know. Like it's just cool to hear, like how you were saying, like you're just kind of, you knew you kind of were, the compass was kind of zoned in, you're kind of figuring it out. One thing led to another, and now you're like, oh damn, I kind of strayed around, but like looking back, it's all making sense how I got here.
100%. And you know, to this day, I will never. I think this is something all designers do, probably all artists do. Is I don't look at myself as a good artist yet. You know, we're our worst critics. You know, so I look at myself back then, and I was like, wow, I was rough back then. I still look at myself now.
Yeah.
You know, this isn't where I want to be or need to be. I can be better I can be better. You know, and so I think constantly just trusting that process, but being hungry for growth and improvement is the nature of all artists, and it's definitely my nature. And so I'll make a poster and I'll love it, and I'll say, oh, this is nice, and we end up going with it, and a week later I'll look at it. The 272 example that I just talked a little about before earlier bothers the hell out of me when I look at it, because I airbrushed the hell out of Jorge's abs on that poster, which got called out by every fan in existence, and is something that I see immediately when I look at that thing now. So I'll look at my work 5 days afterwards and I'll hate it, So I think being my own critic, being our own critic is important. Keeping that humility, I'm not anywhere where I need to be, and I'm not as good as I need to be. So I'm never gonna get cocky or have a sort of mindset of I made it. Now, I'm made it until you made it. So I'm fighting forward always.
Did when you put that post, so when you're originally editing it, did you know, like, did you see like, oh, someone will notice this, for like did you know that was gonna happen before it went out? You're like, oh, it's fine.
This
Or like,
this is the one example that I did. In certain photo treatments and certain treatments on the fighters and stuff like that, sometimes I'll jump in and mess with some of the highlights or the shadows to bulk people out, make them look a little bit better and things like that. And I'm very hard on myself about that. I'm very hard on myself and like, that doesn't look good anymore. It doesn't look realistic. That looks over the top. And usually I'll always go in and tone things down and say, let's back it off here.
yeah.
This one snuck by me, And as soon as I saw I don't even know, I was looking at when we posted on Twitter or something, and I had seen someone say, actually, no, it was Kobe. Kobe called it out and embedded. He said, these are definitely fake abs. I can tell you right now, and I can tell the audience, those are not fake abs. I did spice them up a little bit too much, and I look at it myself and I'm disgusted. I'm like, how did I not walk back that treatment there and not make it as extreme as I had it? And it's a fun little story now because it ended up feeding into the fight week juice between the two. Totally unintentional. Totally, I wish it didn't. Obviously,
Oh,
in my
interesting.
is an error, but it it's funny the way it ended up going. And, Kobe has his fun with it. So
yeah, I mean, I don't think, but when it happens to me, it's not as big as the audience. It's probably like the model I worked with, right? And whoever follows me on Instagram. But there's a time where I was editing, and before, I think feedback would be like, oh, you're not touching up the skin enough, so it looks rough. And then I overcorrected and touched up too much.
yeah,
And so there's one photo where a recent one too, where I was looking like, it looks really Photoshop, but when even if I dialed it back like 50%, it still looks better than how it was. It should be fine. And I sent it to her, and sure enough, I see her later. She's like, yeah, you kind of did too much. Like, I think if you just edited, it would have been fine. I'm like, damn it, But like, that's funny. Like, there's like, you can have a boss and an editor that's going to tell you to fix. But at some point, if you want to grow, you have to make your own decision. Like, this is good. I decided this. And then scar tissue.
You have to have that level of taste and discretion to look at something and say, hey, this, even if this does get approved, like I think I can make this certain area of my work better.
Yeah.
These abs not be as popping as they are.
Yeah. I feel like that's
that one will stick with me. That one will stick with me for a while, and I get plenty of guff about it. You're the ab guy, right? I'm the Jorge ab poster guy. But
yeah. That's cool though. I mean, it's still cool to just think like the whole story of the fact that you're saying like, in a way, like you dropped out. Oh, I don't know if you dropped out, you paused it, but you put college on hold. You kind of started as an intern. You kind of just ended up in graphic design like an interesting way, and then now you're one of the biggest UFC fighters. Is like, hey, that's not how you do it, and like that's the conversation you're at now.
It was kind of a pinch myself moment. I'm like, wait a minute, Kobe just talked about the poster. They never. It's rare that they'll talk about the posters and stuff like that. So he just talked about the key art unembedded. He was calling me out, But okay, and then funny enough, actually, as the week went on, one of the later episodes of Embedded, he brought it up again, but he said he said no, UFC needs to give that designer a raise because he made his abs look like they're actually there. I'm like, okay, we're getting a little bit of both over here, nice.
Yeah.
It was a pinch myself moment to just hear it,
Yeah. That's cool, man. You've had an interesting journey. That's very cool. Um, I am nearing time and have to run. As we wrap it up, I know I asked kind of in the beginning, like what makes a good designer, but even maybe going a step back, what's some advice you could give to a new designer that's really trying to get their engine going?
New designers out there, you know, there are the things that you hear right off the bat, always about this piece of advice to people, work hard, stay late, stick around, do the things. Those are all extremely true. But I think the biggest thing is open yourself up, be a sponge, and learn perspective, learn what you can take and learn from all of your little interactions in the day. Say if you are doing an internship at a team or a brand, every little interaction you have throughout the day with your coworkers and peers, there are things you can learn, there are things you can take from it outside of design. You need to know how to handle yourself in a corporate environment if you're going to be working for a brand like UFC or a professional team, let's say. And so, learning the little things day in and day out from the people you're around about, how to have those conversations creatively and not, and otherwise, and how to, be an asset to whichever, team, corporation, brand that you end up, working with in the future. There are things you can pull artistically and not from every person you interact with, and don't be afraid to learn. Don't be afraid to be a sponge, and keep the ears open at all times, and just learn, soak up as much as you can, and, apply that as often as you can in the way you interact and the way you work on things, the way you communicate with people. I think that's the biggest thing is communication. Know how to deal with different situations, know how to take criticism, know how to take critique and apply, changes to it and things like that. And I think just accept that where you're at, understand that you don't know what you don't know at this point yet. Like I said, for me, I came in and I knew I didn't know a thing, So accept the fact that there's so much to learn and open yourself up, and try not to block things out of spite or things like that, and you're gonna go so far because you're gonna learn so much, and apply it, work hard, like I said, as much as you can.
Yeah. That's great advice, man. I appreciate that. Yeah. Where can people follow your work and learn more about you?
I'm very active on Twitter and Instagram at bmarasch13. That's probably the most places that you see my work out. But I like to collect things there as well. I have a website, baileyMarasch.com. That's sort of my portfolio, my kind of hub, my homepage for everything that I'm updating as often as I can, and keeping things up to date with what I'm working on, where I'm at, and yeah, those are the spots.
For sure, man. Well, hey, thanks for everyone that joined the interview today. I'm going to stop the recording. Go ahead and look more into Bailey if you want to look more into graphic design. I'm gonna go and stop the recording, and I'll see you all soon. Bye.